No one teaches you this in school, but money will expose everything you try to hide. Your insecurities, your pride, your fear of being overlooked, your desperate need to feel like you matter. Most people believe money is about logic, income, expenses, budgeting, strategy. But ask yourself, have you ever bought something just to feel better? Ever stayed in a job, a relationship, a routine, just because it looked successful from the outside? Then you know the truth. Money is emotional. And for many people, it becomes the most powerful and invisible force guiding their lives. You don't just spend money, you spend meaning. You don't just chase stability, you chase identity. You think you're building freedom, but if you're not careful, you're just reinforcing a more expensive cage. Welcome to the Stoic Lighthouse. Let the Stoic Lighthouse guide you toward peace and wisdom. If you're tired of surface-level financial advice that ignores what's happening inside you, hit the like button, subscribe, and stay with me until the end. Because today, we're not talking about how to get more money. We're talking about how to get clarity, how to free yourself from a system that profits every time you doubt your worth. Modern Stoic Ryan Holiday says it best. If you don't know what you stand for, the world will sell you something every single time. And the price is usually your peace. In this video, we'll uncover 8 Stoic insights that go far beyond finance. You'll see how emotional confusion becomes poor financial choices. You'll learn why internal chaos leads to external debt. And most of all, you'll understand how ancient Stoics and modern thinkers who brought this wisdom to today's world can help you rebuild a relationship with money that is conscious, principled, and free from fear. And stay until the end, because I'll share one question that might completely rewire the way you make decisions from this point forward. Let's begin. Principle number 1, the wealth that makes you poor, the hidden era of unfiltered abundance. Imagine this, you finally reach the financial goal you've been chasing. The promotion hits, the income rises. You get the bigger apartment, the newer car, the weekends that finally look like they belong on someone else's Instagram feed. And yet, something still feels off. Not because you failed, but because success came without direction. According to Epictetus, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. But in today's world, especially in American culture, that idea sounds almost absurd. We're taught from childhood that more is better, more money means more freedom, more stuff means more happiness. But the Stoics would call this what it is, a form of emotional illusion. Because if your abundance isn't filtered by wisdom, it becomes noise. It distracts you from what matters. And worst of all, it starts to define your self-worth. Seneca warned us long ago, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. This craving, this endless hunger, it's not just financial, it's spiritual. You buy to feel control, you earn to feel valuable, you chase because everyone else is chasing, but no one asks where we're going. It's a silent race with no finish line, and you don't realize you're lost until you're already exhausted. Marcus Aurelius, writing in the midst of imperial power, still confessed that the more people chase status and wealth, the more they lose themselves. He wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." Now ask yourself, what do you believe wealth should bring you? Peace, confidence, freedom? Here's the hard truth. If you're not building those things internally, no external gain will ever be enough. Because in the absence of self-awareness, wealth will only amplify your inner chaos. Modern Stoic Massimo Pigliucci puts it this way, if you're not training your mind, your money will train you, and it won't be in your favor. It will train you to measure your worth by digits, to compare yourself with people who aren't even playing the same game, to sacrifice meaning for metrics. You stop asking, do I want this? And start asking, what will they think if I don't have it? This is where Stoicism hits hardest. It reminds us that freedom isn't found in ownership, but in sovereignty of the soul. Crates of Thebes, a precursor to the Stoics, gave away his fortune not because he hated money, but because he loved clarity more. He saw the danger of possessions turning into chains, and many Americans today, buried under credit card debt, monthly subscriptions, and endless financial obligations, live out this truth without ever realizing it. Stoic application, practical reflection. Here's your practice for today. Look at your next financial goal and ask, is this truly for me, or is this me performing for the world? Then go deeper. What am I hoping this will fix inside me? Because if your peace is always tied to a future income, you'll never know how to be whole in the present. The Stoics didn't ask you to hate wealth, they asked you to master it, to own it without becoming owned, to desire it without depending on it, to earn it without losing yourself in the process. And in a culture that confuses visibility with value, that might be the most radical wealth strategy of all. Principle number 2, the virtue of renunciation, the power of choosing less. When everyone wants more, in a culture that never stops upgrading, where every ad screams, "You deserve better," and every scroll on your feed shows someone with more, choosing less feels like rebellion. But what if that rebellion is exactly what your soul needs? In modern America, we're sold the illusion that the next thing will finally make us feel complete. The next car, the next raise, the next tier of lifestyle. But behind that chase is a quiet exhaustion, the emotional fatigue of never arriving. According to Seneca, it is not the man who has little, but he who desires more that is poor. Choosing less in this world isn't about poverty, it's about power. It's about stepping off the treadmill that turns ambition into addiction. It's about reclaiming your ability to say, "I have enough, I am enough." Marcus Aurelius, a man who had access to everything, still wrote in his meditations about the beauty of restraint. He reminded himself and us that true greatness lies in self-governance, not self-indulgence. If you seek tranquility, he wrote, do less, or rather, do what's essential, and do it with intention. But let's be honest, in the US, minimalism is often marketed as aesthetic, not ethical. We glamorize simplicity through curated Instagram homes and neutral-toned capsule wardrobes while still carrying the same restless hunger inside. That's not renunciation, that's rebranding consumption. True renunciation is invisible. It happens in the quiet space where you say no, not because you can't have it, but because you don't need it. It's the calm in your chest when you walk past temptation without flinching. It's when your values speak louder than your desires, and your identity isn't up for sale. According to Musonius Rufus, teacher of Epictetus and a voice of fierce Stoic practicality, the wise man is self-sufficient, not because he lacks, but because he knows what truly suffices. Modern Stoic Donald Robertson adds, discipline isn't about denial, it's about clarity. You train your desires not to punish yourself, but to become someone who can't be controlled by them. And then that's the deeper truth. When you can't say no, you're not free, you're owned. Think about how often money is spent just to keep up with people who don't even notice you. How often we upgrade things that weren't broken, stretch budgets for things we don't use, say yes to expenses that steal our time, peace and presence. This isn't lifestyle design, it's lifestyle distortion. And every yes to excess is a no to the space your soul needs to breathe. Stoic application, practical reflection. This week, choose one area of your life where you're tempted to upgrade or indulge. Ask yourself, am I doing this to impress others or to express what truly matters to me? Then try this. Deliberately choose less, not out of guilt, but out of strength. Buy the simpler option. Skip the unnecessary add-on. Say no to the just because purchase and notice what happens, not in your bank account, but in your mind. Because the one who chooses less with clarity often ends up with more of what actually matters: peace, presence, and power. Principle number 3, the peace you can't buy. Why chasing external stability is like walking on sand. Imagine trying to build a house on the beach. The foundation shifts, the walls crack. No matter how beautiful it looks, the ground underneath is never still. That's what it's like to build your sense of peace on things you can't control. Your job, your income, your reputation, your market investments, your social status. You may look stable from the outside, but inside, you're always bracing for the next wave. According to Marcus Aurelius, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But here's the trap. Everything in modern American life is designed to make us believe that peace comes from the outside. Financial security, a stable career, a perfect family. We treat peace like a product, something you can save up for, earn, or buy. But the Stoics knew better. Peace isn't something you achieve. It's something you protect. And most people are protecting the wrong things. Seneca warned that when your emotional state is tied to fortune, you are not living, you are gambling. He who depends on fortune, he wrote, must also prepare to suffer her whims. That new house can burn, that career can end, that stock portfolio can crash. And if your calmness depends on those things staying intact, then you've mistaken comfort for security. Ryan Holiday, one of the leading voices in modern Stoicism, puts it bluntly, you don't control the world, only how you respond to it. And yet we overextend ourselves trying to control everything. We believe that if we can just earn a bit more, schedule better, build the perfect setup, then finally we'll relax. But that moment never comes. Because the more you chase external peace, the more it slips through your fingers. This is the sand, and the Stoics urge us. Stop building your identity there. Build it instead on character, on resilience, on presence. Because when those things are solid, the winds can come, and you'll bend, but you won't break. Epictetus taught that serenity begins the moment we stop wishing for things to be different. Seek not for events to happen as you wish, he said, but wish for them to happen as they do, and your life will flow smoothly. That's not passivity. That's power. It's the quiet force of someone who can walk through chaos and remain unmoved. And in a noisy world full of panic and performance, that kind of peace is revolutionary. Stoic application, practical reflection. Right now, identify one area where you've been clinging to external control. Your job title, your follower count, your income stability. Then ask yourself, what part of this am I using as proof that I'm okay? Because if your calm only exists when things go your way, it's not calm, it's a conditional illusion, and the Stoic path is to dissolve that illusion, not by rejecting the world, but by anchoring yourself in what cannot be taken from you. Peace is not a finish line, it's a decision you make, again and again, to live by your values, not your circumstances. Principle number 4, the subtle slavery. How the desire for recognition is quietly sinking your finances. You might not realize it, but a huge percentage of your spending isn't about comfort or necessity. It's about image, the upgraded phone, the leased car, the designer sneakers, the curated vacations. Many of these aren't acts of joy. They're acts of survival, social survival. According to Epictetus, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid by others. But in today's hyper-connected culture, being misunderstood is a kind of death. We're trained from early on to perform, to be seen as competent, successful, polished, and nowhere is this more weaponized than in how we spend. You don't just buy the watch. You buy what the watch says about you. You don't just rent the loft. You rent the lifestyle you hope others associate with it. This is what the Stoics called voluntary slavery, the moment your actions stop being guided by reason and start being dictated by public opinion. And like a parasite, it feeds on your deepest insecurity, the fear of being invisible. According to Seneca, No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. When your life is too busy proving things to others, you'll never prove anything to yourself, and that's where the slavery begins. You become a worker in the factory of your own false image. You spend not to build a future, but to avoid shame. You choose debt over disappointment, and slowly you betray your values in exchange for applause. Musonius Rufus, known for his blunt Stoic wisdom, taught that one of the highest duties of a rational being is to live in accordance with virtue, not vanity. He believed that the pursuit of admiration was a form of moral decay because it places your worth in the hands of people who don't truly know you or care for your well-being. And that hits hard today, because in the age of personal branding and social metrics, it's become normal to build financial ruin, trying to look put together. Ryan Holiday reinforces this when he writes, "Ego is the enemy, not because it's loud, but because it's hungry, and it never stops feeding." Stoic application, practical reflection. Here's a question that can expose the roots of your spending patterns. Would I still buy this if no one ever saw it? Ask this not once, but before every major expense. Because every dollar you spend to impress others is a dollar invested in your own emotional instability. And the more your self-image depends on external approval, the more expensive your life becomes, financially and psychologically. True wealth is quiet, true freedom is private, and true confidence is built when you no longer need to be seen to feel real. Principle number 5, the unnecessary suffering. How anxiety about the future sabotages your finances in the present. There's a silent tax almost nobody talks about, and it's not deducted from your paycheck. It's deducted from your peace. It's the cost of worrying about things that haven't happened yet. The future mortgage, the market crash, the medical bill, the job loss. You haven't lived through these events, but your body, your mind, and your bank account already act like you have. According to Seneca, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. In modern America, anxiety is normalized, even glamorized. We call it being proactive. We call it being on top of things. But here's the hard truth. Much of our financial behavior is not strategy. It's fear in disguise. You overwork not because you love the grind, but because you're terrified of falling behind. You save compulsively, not from discipline, but from a belief that disaster is always around the corner. You obsess over side hustles, not for growth, but because standing still feels like drowning. And while the Stoics valued prudence, they made a sharp distinction. There's a difference between preparing for the future and being paralyzed by it. Marcus Aurelius, facing plagues, wars, and political chaos, still found the courage to write, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it if you have to, with the same weapons of reason that today arm you against the present." Yet we treat worry as if it is preparation. We think that if we feel bad enough now, maybe we'll avoid pain later. But all this does is weaken your ability to make clear, courageous financial choices in the present. Modern Stoic. Donald Robertson connects this directly to cognitive psychology. He teaches that anxiety is the result of distorted perception, and Stoicism is a therapy of perspective. According to him, when you exaggerate the future, you underperform in the present. You lose twice. And the financial impact is real. You delay investing out of fear. You overspend for comfort. You undersell your skills. You chase security so desperately that you forget how to build it. Here's the paradox. You're not afraid of the future. You're afraid of not being ready. But readiness isn't about predicting everything. It's about trusting that you can handle what comes, because your mind is trained, not just your savings account. Ricipo of Soli, a central figure in Stoic logic, believed that a rational life is one that frees you from the tyranny of imagined catastrophes. And in his teachings, clarity was the antidote to fear. Stoic application, practical reflection. Start by writing down your top 3 financial worries for the future. Now ask, which of these am I suffering from without it even happening yet? Then ask, what can I control right now, today, that strengthens me for that possibility? Because preparing from strength is stoic. Living from fear is not. Anxiety will steal your attention, your energy, and your money unless you confront it with reason. And that begins by refusing to pay for a future you haven't even lived. Principle number 6. The illusion of deserved reward. Why your anger about money reveals fragile expectations. You followed the formula. You studied. You sacrificed. You worked the extra hours. And yet, you're still not where you thought you'd be. Meanwhile, others, less qualified, less disciplined, seem to soar past you. And deep down, a dangerous thought begins to grow. I did everything right. I deserve more than this. According to Epictetus, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. In modern America, this opinion is everywhere. The belief that success is a simple equation. Hard work plus good character, prosperity. But when life breaks that equation, many don't know how to handle the emotional fallout. They don't just feel disappointed, they feel betrayed. Here's what the Stoics would say. The world never promised you fairness. Your expectations did. And if your emotional stability is built on external rewards, then your peace will always be for sale. According to Marcus Aurelius, when you are distressed by something, it is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Modern Stoic Massimo Pigliucci echoes this with a scientific. When you believe you're owed something, every unmet outcome feels like injustice, when in fact it might just be chance or timing. And that mindset, left unchecked, becomes a financial liability. You make emotional decisions with your money. You chase status out of spite. You give up too early because why bother if the system's rigged? But here's where the Stoic lens cuts through. It's not about deserving. It's about doing what's right regardless of result. Because real strength and real peace comes not from being rewarded, but from being aligned. Ryan Holiday, drawing from this exact principle, reminds us, effort is enough. Focus on the work, not the recognition. In other words, do it because it's noble, not because it will pay off. Because if your virtue collapses when the applause stops. Seneca, writing under political pressure and moral conflict, warned of this illusion centuries ago. A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not. He didn't mean to give up. He meant to detach your identity from the outcome. If you expect life to reward you for being good, then every delay, every obstacle, every failure becomes personal. But the Stoic flips that script. The obstacle is the training, the failure is the teacher. Stoic application, practical reflection. Ask yourself honestly, where in my financial life am I angry? And is that anger based on a belief that I'm owed something? Then flip the question. What if I stopped demanding results and started demanding consistency from myself instead? This isn't surrender. This is self-liberation. Because when you release the need for reward, you gain the one thing no system can deny you, inner authority. And that, not recognition, is the beginning of true wealth. Principle number 7, the invisible bill. How lack of self-knowledge is charging you emotional interest daily. Every day you wake up and spend the most precious resource you have. And it's not money, it's not time, it's you, your energy, your focus, your attention. Your emotional credit line is constantly being withdrawn by people, jobs, habits, fears. And the tragic part, most of us never stop to read the fine print. We spend without knowing who we are, why we do what we do, or what truly matters. According to Epictetus, know first who you are and then adorn yourself accordingly. But in America, you're taught to do the opposite. to build the outfit before the identity, to create the brand before discovering the person. You perform, consume, upgrade, hoping that the next version of yourself will finally feel real. But here's the cost of living like that. You build success, but still feel insecure. You win approval, but lose your voice. This is the invisible bill, and it charges daily interest on every moment you ignore your inner life. Marcus Aurelius wrote with brutal clarity, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And if your thoughts are shaped by noise, pressure, and performance, your soul becomes a shadow of your true self. Donald Robertson, bridging Stoicism with modern psychology, explains it this way. People avoid self-reflection because they fear what they might find. But the cost of that avoidance is a lifetime of misdirected effort. You work hard, you chase goals, but you never feel at peace because the person doing the chasing is still a stranger to you. And that stranger spends impulsively. That stranger says yes to please others. That stranger avoids hard truths by hiding behind busyness. According to Seneca, people are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. Now, imagine this. Every dollar you spend, every decision you make, every commitment you accept is either a reflection of your identity or a distraction from the fact that you haven't built one. Ryan Holiday calls this the quiet erosion of your character. He writes, "You can't build a legacy when you haven't built a self. Discipline without direction is just performance." So here's the bitter truth most people avoid. Your lack of self-knowledge is costing you deeply, not just in wasted time, not just in financial detours, but in the erosion of the one thing Stoicism values most, your capacity to live with reason, freedom, and inner stability. Stoic application, practical reflection. Here's your challenge, one that few people ever take. Sit down in silence. No phone, no music, just you and a blank page. Now ask, who am I when there's no audience? What values do I want my life to reflect, even if no one ever applauds? Where in my finances am I compensating for a lack of clarity inside? Write it out. Let it sting. Because the pain of confrontation is cheaper than a lifetime of unconscious decisions. And here's the reward Stoicism offers. When you know who you are, you stop being manipulated by advertising, by culture, by expectations. Your spending aligns, your choices sharpen, your peace returns. Because when you reclaim your inner compass, money stops being a mask. It becomes a mirror, one that finally reflects the real you. Principle number 8, the most wasted treasure. How you're spending the most valuable asset without noticing. What if I told you that the most reckless thing you do with your money has nothing to do with your bank account? Because the real loss isn't financial. It's the hours you'll never get back, the moments you sleepwalk through, the days sacrificed to other people's agendas, the years traded for approval, convenience, and distraction. According to Seneca, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. In a culture like America's, where every minute must be monetized and every idle hour feels like guilt, wasting time doesn't always look like laziness. Sometimes it looks like productivity. It looks like staying busy. It looks like chasing goals you never questioned and saying yes to things that don't move your soul an inch closer to who you want to be. You're not wasting time by doing nothing. You're wasting it by doing the wrong things for the wrong reasons. Ryan Holiday, reflecting on this in Stillness is the Key, writes, "We are addicted to busyness because we're afraid of what silence might reveal. But silence reveals the truth, and the truth is this: you've been spending your most valuable asset, your attention, on things that leave you emptier." Marcus Aurelius understood this danger well. Even as Emperor of Rome, he wrote in his journals to remind himself of this. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. The Stoics weren't obsessed with death. They were obsessed with using life well. And for them, nothing was more tragic than the person who reaches the end, only to realize they were never truly present. Modern Stoic Massimo Pigliucci expands this with brutal clarity. Every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to everything else. So stop saying yes out of fear. Say it from intention, or not at all. But here's what's insidious. You won't get a warning when your time is being wasted. There's no notification that tells you, hey, you've spent the last 3 years trying to impress people who don't actually respect you. No alarm rings when you scroll through your life like a passive observer. No bill arrives that shows how many golden hours you gave away to noise. But the price is real, and most people don't realize they've overpaid until it's too late. According to Epictetus, how long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? Stoic application, practical reflection. This week, perform a time audit, not of your schedule, but of your soul. Ask, where is my attention going? Is it aligned with the life I claim to want? If today were my last ordinary day, would I be proud of how I spent it? Write down the real answers, no edits. Then choose one activity, one obligation, one commitment, and release it. Not because it's bad, but because it's not yours. That single act of subtraction might return the greatest wealth you've ever known. Clarity, presence, and the feeling of actually being alive inside your own life. Let's take one final breath together and look at what we've just unmasked. Today, you didn't watch a video about money. You watched a mirror that revealed how easily our modern lives are shaped by fear disguised as ambition, by validation disguised as goals, by busyness disguised as purpose. You saw that financial instability isn't always about lack. Sometimes it's about confusion about what matters, about where your values begin and where other people's expectations end. You saw how your need to be recognized can become your downfall, how anxiety about the future paralyzes your ability to act wisely in the present, how the stories you tell yourself about what you deserve can sabotage your growth, and how the lack of self-knowledge can quietly bankrupt your life without ever touching your wallet. According to Marcus Aurelius, you have been made by nature for the purpose of virtue. Do not betray it by chasing shadows. And Ryan Holiday echoes, the reward of virtue is virtue, not applause, not riches, not ease. So what does this mean for you right now? It means the real wealth you're searching for doesn't live in your income bracket. It lives in your ability to choose with clarity, to walk through noise without losing your silence, to succeed without forgetting your soul, and to say, this is enough. Not because you've settled, but because you've awakened. Share your voice. Comment below. I choose wealth guided by wisdom. Let's build something bigger than a following. Let's build a movement. If this resonated, like the video, subscribe to the Stoic Lighthouse. Share it with someone who's tired of pretending to be fine. Because here, we don't measure a good life by the digits. We measure it by depth. And speaking of depth, in our next video, we're entering the emotional battlefield. We'll uncover 6 silent mistakes that are destroying your relationship and how Stoicism can fix each one. You'll learn why good intentions aren't enough, and how a shift in mindset might save the connection you thought was slipping away. Until then, remember, a rich life isn't one filled with things. It's one ruled by reason, led by virtue, and lived with presence. That kind of life doesn't just look good. It feels unshakably real. Let the world chase more. You chase meaning.